I'm Danielle, your host of the Abridged to Motherhood podcast, the place where moms like you learn to thrive, not just survive through pregnancy, birth, and postpartum. I'm a birth and postpartum doula and a mom of two who's been where you are. My first pregnancy was filled with so much excitement, but it was also marked by stress, anxiety, and fear of the unknown. I thought I had everything mapped out, but when postpartum hit, I realized how unprepared I was for the physical, emotional, and mental toll of motherhood. It was overwhelming, lonely, and nothing like I imagined. When I found out I was pregnant again, I knew I needed to approach things differently. I made it my mission to not only prepare for postpartum, but to prioritize myself in the process. That shift changed everything. Now I'm here to help you do the same. Whether you're navigating your first pregnancy, feeling buried under endless advice, or struggling to figure out what you actually need for postpartum, this podcast is your safe space. You'll find practical tips, honest conversations, and expert insights to help you feel informed, supported, and empowered through every stage of motherhood. If you're ready to feel confident, prepared, and truly supported in your motherhood journey, stick around. This is for you. Hey friends, welcome back to the Abridged to Motherhood podcast. As promised, I have my husband here with me today, and we are going to be just talking about his experience with me having postpartum depression and anxiety and just everything that he learned and how he helped support me through that. So thanks, honey.
Hi, honey. Thanks for having me.
Let's think back to when I was pregnant and then first postpartum. What were some of the signs you saw that made you think that maybe I was experiencing some postpartum depression or anxiety, like red flags that maybe weren't normal for me?
For you, I would say it was nesting on steroids. I know that in your head you were trying to prepare and you were helpful, and it was very helpful. But there was some things where I was like, oh, I don't know that needs to be done. There were some things that I thought maybe it prepared us as a family, so it was a good thing in the sense that we had a binder of all of our documents when that was something that we had never done before, not anything that I think a lot of families have on hand. It was almost like you were preparing me to almost take over the role in some ways, and it was, I used it, I referred to it, but so if I had to look back on that and think about it with our first one, that would be just two small examples.
Yeah, I remember me, I was vacuuming the basement steps, and at that point, we weren't even using our basement.
Yeah, there was nothing down there. I think it was some storage tubs and a Christmas tree. There was nothing down there.
Yeah.
And we're vacuuming steps and,
Yeah, that was when I was pregnant. And then postpartum, late at night, I was reorganizing our kitchen cabinets and stuff because I was having trouble sleeping.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then as things got kind of progressively worse from your perspective, obviously there was a lot of crying, but was there anything else that you remember from that time period, before we got me help, that was really scary for you?
I don't think that I was particularly, I don't think scared is the right word. I think I was very concerned. I became very aware about it. I was like, oh, it's, all of the things that women experience during this postpartum time. She'll rebound, all these things. But it was almost like there was just some things that you didn't shake when you normally had done that before. I think if I was to look back on it, there was a collection of moments where I'd be like, oh, okay.
And then I remember you came with me to see my OB because at, 5 or 6 weeks, we were like, okay. I think my mom really spearheaded that. Things aren't right. We need to go talk to her. And it was because it was before my 6-week appointment.
Mm-hmm.
And you and my mom came with me. And I remember her saying, what scares me now is that you're numb. At that point, I wasn't even crying anymore. I was just, there was no emotion, no affect. And that was like the first, step we took. And then she put me on the drug that did not work for me. Mm-hmm. We went and saw that other OB, and he was like, yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And I remember us, like, we obviously had the baby with us and my mom, and we went to that diner in Chagrin Falls. And I remember, I think maybe you both were hopeful, but I remember still having like the really scary thoughts in my head and being like, I don't think this guy is right. Mm-hmm. Like, there's clearly something wrong with me. And then it got to the point for the 10 days that I was incapable of doing anything, and you took over care. You and my mom took over care completely of our daughter. And I think I would just like you to share a little bit how that felt for you at that time when I was incapable of being a mom.
Well, I guess the first thing that I would say is, as a new parent, your first time going through it, guys, just pay attention to her. I personally don't think that I was in tune enough from the emotional side with you to comprehend what was going on. As far as the 10 days, if you will, it was, I mean, I had a complete faith that you would come out of this, and I just knew if I could keep this ship from sinking, if you will, then things would be okay. But I mean, it was definitely a concerning time. Like, there was moments, imprinted on my mind, as I'm sure there were for you, and just kind of going through the whole experience. But going back to what I said a second ago, like, guys, I know you're trying to get through, and ladies, explain to the guys, hey, pay attention to my emotions, because, that's going to really give some indicator, paying attention to the affect and all the different things that go along with that. And not to sound like, the coach or anything like that, but I knew that I just know your mentality. You kind of attack anything that you perceive to be a problem and go about fixing it. Was it scary? Yes, because we have this new little baby. How are we going to take care of it? Your mom was wonderful. She stepped up. I always said my favorite days, and this was after the 10 days, of course. I always said my favorite days were Fridays, because Nana would come over and kind of take over the morning routine. But, once you did get everything right, and I'm jumping ahead, but once you did get everything squared away there and you were back at work and stuff, like, the mornings were in my zone. And it was a time where, our daughter and I, we had our own little way of doing things in the morning. But again, on Fridays, I was happy to see Nana.
I'm glad that you brought that up, because when you can go back and listen to my story that I shared last week, but I talked about going back to work around 12 weeks, and I actually had to be at work before you. I was up so early. I was up at like 5:30, 5:45 to go to work. Had to leave here by like 6:30ish.
I think you had to be there like 7:15 at the latest.
Yeah, so I was up really early. So yeah, he would get her up and do his own thing. But I think something really beautiful that came out of that time of me like really struggling was like you really stepped up and learned to care for her, and you guys still have a super strong bond today. And I think the experience with our son was so different because I did so much better that like he was so much more attached to me.
Yeah, like he's just starting to be my buddy.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's not true. His whole first year of life, though, he really only wanted mom and dad. But, like, probably the first 6 months, it was all mom,
I had longer than 6 months.
Yeah. But that's I'm glad that you brought that up. And what he said about, like, paying attention to her affect. Yes, those first couple weeks are like baby blues. That's normal. But after, as she's starting to get better and maybe getting a little bit more sleep, she should be returning to somewhat normal. Not the same, but your spouse. For
sure.
Yeah, how they act. And I think you saw that so differently with our son. Because, I mean, I was, those first couple weeks, I had baby blues with him. Mm-hmm. I remember crying but we had a completely different strategy the second time around, too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I like how you mentioned strategy there, because in my brain, going through everything we went through with our daughter, I was, you sort of like, oh, I know how this goes. And, obviously not a great experience, within that small time frame as far as, the 10 days after and all of that. But I kind of was waiting for the other shoe to drop, if that makes sense. And to your absolute credit, there was a plan. You executed that plan. You had everything in place, and you were the quarterback. And you just said, "Gary, you go here," and I went there. And I just did what I was asked to do. And that's something. Looking back on it now, ladies, just tell the men to show up. You know what you need. If not, there's someone around you that knows what you need, and they'll just have to be there to take care of those things.
I mean, that communication piece, I talk about that on the podcast all the time. Like, I know, ladies, sometimes you want them to read your mind, but they can't. And especially when it comes to like this emotional stuff, and they've never given birth. They don't understand that huge hormonal experience, what our body has been through and all of those changes. So
I think a part goes back to like, just communicating with your men there, and explaining to them like, hey, if this happens, we should try to do this. Like, just kind of talk and communicate about, some sort of game plan, understanding that you flex things, you alter things if needed. But I think making your guys aware about what they may see, or what they should look out for if this is your first, second, third, however many kids you may have, I think that would be a big help to them so that they know how to support.
Yeah, and something that we did differently the second time around was we went to counseling together a couple times, maybe two or three times. Mm-hmm. And I think that just like gave us the time and space too to like talk about that game plan and have somebody as like that mediator for us. And I remember even it was a male counselor, and he was great. He even was like, okay, how can we get creative where you two can find time to like spend together or talk things out? And I remember he was the one that suggested if my parents were over with the baby, like we sneak away for 30 minutes and take a walk. But it was so much about communication. And when I was really bad even, and I was struggling to communicate, do you remember us journaling back and forth? Like I wrote to you and then you wrote back to me.
I remember it. I don't even remember how we got there. I tried to follow your lead with that because your emotional intelligence and IQ is a lot higher than mine. So I thought that's where you were at the moment, and my goal was to just meet you where you were at.
But you did. Like I brought that to you because I was having a hard time getting it out verbally, but I was able to kind of process it written down, and then you were able to like go, oh, okay, like I'm gonna write back to her. And it
was helpful for me too, though, like to kind of understand what you were experiencing, what you were going through. It was just another way to, I mean, we've said the word communicate, but it was almost like a dialogue without having the tenseness that can sometimes come with conversations.
Yeah, and when I was in such like an emotionally heightened state, it was just so much easier for me even to process that way as well. The one other thing I know that you did was my mom got you a book. It was like the Postpartum Husband or something. And I know you didn't read the whole thing, but like you read bits and pieces of that. I remember that.
Well, because it's kind of like in different stages, and we were past a couple of them already. And, I'm big on practicality. So what's going to work for me here in this moment?
And it had like tips, right?
If I remember correctly, I would say, if I was to give any practical advice, if we shifted towards that, I would say pay attention to her affect, find a way to have a dialogue where you're going back and forth, and honestly, I would say sit next to her and hold her hand. Just let the body language be gentle and just listen. I go back to the marriage advice that we were given from, the pastor. Do you want me to listen or do you want me to fix it? And those were learning experiences for me because I could see what was going on, but I couldn't fix it. So I struggled with that part because I just wanted to help you and take care of you, but there was nothing that I could really do. So Yeah, I would try to find those practical steps where you communicate, be it, the dialogue, writing, whatever that looks like, and having those moments together where it's not as intense. Like, be gentle, be understanding, and all those things.
Yeah. I mean, marriages break up during postpartum because it can be really, really difficult. And I think you made a really good point. No, you couldn't fix it, but you supported me through it really well by listening and by following my lead in a lot of ways too.
Well, I kind of think that's a lot of the first part of parenting for us guys, at least with the first one. I mean, like, we all have instincts, but let's just be honest. The parental instincts for women, the maternal instincts are, in my opinion, from my experience, a lot higher than what us men have. Yeah. So, and that's not to be like, oh, guys aren't. I'm not saying that. It's just you all have spent 9 months growing this child and bringing this life into this world. We were there to support you, but I think in the very beginning, especially around that postpartum time, is I'm concerned about the baby, yes, but you're the focal point. And if I can help you and take care of you, you're going to take better care of the baby.
Yeah. And I've talked about that on the podcast so much, but I think hearing that from you is key for a lot of dads to hear that too. Like, just focus on mom, help her. Your support both times, yes, it was communicating and, giving me hugs and that kind of support, but it was also like you bringing me water and you cooking me meals and picking up a little bit more of like the housework. And obviously when we had our second, you spent a lot of time with our daughter so that I could focus on breastfeeding because it was really challenging with our son, just to like give me the time and space to bond with him and make that work. So it's like that support role. And you brought it up earlier too. If mom is struggling to share what she needs, like you were like, well, maybe somebody else. I remember you said something like, have somebody else communicate that. So that's where a doula can come in. I've had those conversations with dads before postpartum of like, hey, this is how she's feeling. This could be some ways to support her. And sometimes you just need that third party. It could be a best friend or somebody that's a little bit ahead of you. Maybe they've had kids that are a little bit older. And we were lucky that we had friends like that could kind of speak into our lives too. But I think you shared a lot of really good wisdom. Is there any last things you would want to share with the people listening to just help them through this time? As a dad, like, speak to the dads.
There's two things. One is understand that this is a season. Understand that she will rebound. She will come back. But just being there to support moms who are experiencing any sort of postpartum anxiety or depression related symptoms, and then others might be fine. Show up, be there. And then I would say, under the whole guise of this is a season, understand that your life in that moment, the three of you or however many of you there are, you'll alter your roles. You'll pick up a different thing. Mom may not do the cooking anymore and dad might do it or something, if that's the case, and then mom would take on another job, or you just be open to what that looks like, because I do know that the tasks around the house, they can get daunting. So just be aware of that and be ready to flex things and alter things if needed.
Yeah, it's so good what you said about it being a season, because it's been that way the whole time, right? Like when we had our first baby.
I'll be honest, I struggle with the whole idea of it still being a season, because I get into a groove and then I want it to stay in that groove, right? So from the perspective of me as a dad, just understanding that the only thing that's constant is that things are going to change.
And your marriage adapts with that.
Yes. And that your role as dad, as husband will change. Role as mom will change. Role as wife will alter. So just understanding that things are seasons and it's not permanent.
Yeah, and you just have to get creative sometimes with like how we've connected and found time for each other and dating each other still. And and just making our marriage a priority too, because I mean, especially in that initial season, it was like we were really supporting me to get better.
Yeah.
But then once I was better, it was like we could focus on us more again.
And the idea that keeps coming into my mind, and this has been more actually prevalent now, it would be, date with intentionality. Just because you order the same food at the same restaurant on every Friday night or every other Friday night, it doesn't mean you are going to keep doing that. So be intentional and find ways to show your spouse that you're thinking about them, that you love them, that you care for them.
That's really good. Well, thanks, hon, for coming on the podcast. Love you.
You're welcome. I love you, babe.
I hope that conversation was really helpful for you to hear, and just maybe you can share it with your spouse or listen together and just really be able to help one another understand each other throughout this postpartum season and just become closer. And I really feel like God used the season that we walked through with my postpartum depression and anxiety, and then I shared in my personal story how we lost my mother-in-law when I was pregnant, and then my dad got sick when my daughter was, about 8 months postpartum. And that year that we walked through of driving back and forth to Chicago, and sometimes by myself, sometimes with my daughter, sometimes all three of us, it was such a difficult season in our lives, but what a testimony it was to God. And it really did. It drew us closer together in our marriage, and just what a testimony to growing together in a difficult season when we could have grown apart, and the Lord used it all. So I hope this conversation blessed you today, and next week I will be sharing conversation with my mom about how she supported me through this time as well, and just everything she learned and walked through as being another support person. And hopefully that will be another really helpful conversation that you could share with caregivers and support people in your life to understand a little bit more about walking through the postpartum season. So I'll see you next week. Thanks so much for tuning in to the A Bridge to Motherhood podcast. I'm so glad you were here today. If you loved this episode, I'd be so grateful if you could leave a review for the podcast on whatever platform you're listening on. Share it with a friend or snap a screenshot and tag me on social media. If you decide to leave me a review, go to abridgetomotherhood.com/review. That link is also in the show notes so that I can send you a little gift in the mail. Your support helps other moms to find the podcast, and it truly means the world to me. Remember, your motherhood journey deserves your care and attention. Until next time, keep showing up for yourself, mama, and don't worry, I'm here to help every step of the way. See you soon.